Hey everybody, Dr. Greco here. So we have been moving through this discussion all week about justice. And I want to point you once again to our podcast. This week's podcast is an extended discussion about biblical justice. You can find it on Buzzsprout. It's called Kingdom Insights, or on Spotify or Amazon or any place you get your podcasts. It's up on several platforms. So go look that up and listen to the School of Ministry's podcast, Kingdom Insights, about justice. So I do want to mention that we have talked this week about it being foundational in the Old Testament and also foundational to Jesus' teaching. But in Matthew 7, Jesus gives us what is the golden rule. And everyone's grandmother taught them the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And Jesus basically says just that in Matthew chapter 7, I believe it's verse 12. Here's the beautiful thing. In doing that, and Jesus teaches about justice all the time, and he doesn't always say, hey, this is a justice talk. He just talks about things, justice being foundational to one of them. But stop and think about the wisdom that's found in that golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. When we take our social conversation about justice, and we said earlier in the week that a lot of times Christians avoid justice conversations because the secular world has usurped justice and made it one of their idols. And so we kind of avoid it because we don't want to have idols. But it doesn't mean that it's not biblical and that we shouldn't deal with it. And when we take the golden rule and apply it to that, let's have a discussion about racism. You know, there are still people in our culture who are treated differently because of the color of their skin. And what the golden rule basically says, what Jesus says to his listeners in Matthew 7 is this: what if you were black? How would you feel? You know, in our culture, in 2023, as crazy as it sounds, you can walk into a grocery store, and if you're black, people might treat you differently. What if that was you, Jesus says? Just put yourself in those shoes. How would you feel? If that's the foundation of how you approach how you live life, how you enact fairness and justice in your neighborhood and towards the people that you meet on the street, that thought, putting yourself in their shoes, that empathy, will change the way you live out justice. That's God's call to us in Christ to live out biblical justice. The golden rule is just one of the ways Jesus tells us to think through that. We'll see you tomorrow for another Ministry in a Minute.